Hello and welcome to my lightning talk. My name is Anna, and I'm going to talk about testing a Redux store today. Before we do that, thank you for having me here, React Alicante. It's really nice to be here, and thanks to all of the sponsors to make all of that possible. 2 words about myself. My name is Anna. I'm an engineer at a pretty neat fintech startup in Munich. And when we started 3 years ago, we decided to do all React. So basically, we kind of went all in 3 years ago. And we did not regret it so far. So we are pretty happy, even though we are really locked into that React universe. That said, within 3 years, you're running into a lot of problems. And one of these problems was, how should we test the Redux store? And to give you a better understanding of what the problem is, let's take a look at a Redux store. No, wrong. So what you see here is a very tiny application. And on the left-hand side, we have the Redux dev tool. The Redux dev tool shows you all of the actions that have been dispatched and all of the states that have been produced out of those actions. And now once I click my Load Kittens button, what you would see is there is an action dispatch called Fetch Kittens, and it would update my state to is fetching true. And somehow magically, because we don't really see what's going on there, somehow magically we get a second action which is called Fetch Kitten Success, which contains a couple of base 64 encoded images, because I wasn't sure I would have Wi-Fi. So what is happening there? We do have a so-called side effect, and that's our magic. So what we do is we would actually request some images from a server, and once we got a response, we would dispatch the second action, the Fetch Kitten Success. And that's a very simple, straightforward Redux store. And what we're going to do now is we're going to test it. And quick introduction. That's your Redux store. So if you remember the Flux pattern, you have the dispatcher, you have the Flux store. And your Redux store is basically both. It contains the dispatcher and the store. And all of the state transitions, that's kind of what we saw, dispatching an action and update, lives within so-called reducers. And a reducer is kind of like, for me, the genius part about Redux. And all of you have ever written a reducer are like, why is she complaining about testing that? All of you who have never written a reducer, that's what a reducer is. And that's really the kitten example that we have seen. So what you see here is we have a function that takes 2 input arguments, which are the current state and an action, and it would return the next state. And wow, it's really simple. And it's getting even simpler if you know what you're expecting to do there. All of those objects must be serializable JavaScript objects, hence JSON, no promises, no callbacks, no nothing. And furthermore, that function is not allowed to produce a side effect. It's not allowed to do any request or anything. And testing that is a test-driven development stream come true. So testing that is as straightforward as it gets and as beautiful as it gets. And so what we test here basically is say, OK, we put in a current state, which is this kind of like is fetching true state that we've seen. We would dispatch the success action, and we would actually see that fetching is false, and we get some kind of image URLs. But remember our application, there was like this additional side effect magic part to it. We didn't look into that yet. And how that works is basically you're allowed to have multiple middlewares. And middlewares are supposed to do all of the side work. I put it within the dispatcher. I'm not sure if Dan would agree, but if you remember the Flux pattern, it actually told you that the dispatcher can decide whether an action is forwarded to the store or not. And a Redux middleware can actually do that. Actually, really big ones do that. So how does our kitten middleware look like? And here it's getting ugly. I mean, kind of did it on purpose. So what we use here is Redux Saga. And Redux Saga is really popular, and it's actually kind of nice. And it uses generator functions to do kind of async functionality. Generator functions basically work like async await, except the async is the star and the yield is the await. And what you see here is basically, we would say whenever fetch kitten is dispatched, we want a second functionality to be executed, and that's fetch kittens from API. That would do our request, parse the data that we get as a response, and would then dispatch the fetch kitten success. Yeah, that's one of the most popular middleware, so that's what a lot of people are doing. That's what it looks like when I try to test it using their documentation. And there it's getting ugly. So you need to remember how generator functions work and this whole next thingy. So basically, I say, fetch kittens from API. I'll go to the first yield, not resolve it, but just go there. In the next step, I resolve it. Remember, we would then take the JSON to call the JSON on the response and would then actually match it. And then we would verify that put action was called with the correct object and verify that nothing else happened here. And now I feel like I'm tested. I was like, I don't feel like I'm testing middleware or I'm testing business logic at all, to be fair. I feel like I'm tested. Did I remember in which order I wrote my code? Because I have to know that to write that test. Do I kind of know how generator functions work? And even worse, will any of my coworker in a week from now understand what kind of business logic I've tested here? And it all boils down to, that's what I actually want to do. I want to say, okay, I'm dispatching fetch kittens. And I want to verify that there are 2 actions dispatched, not only one, and that one of them is async. And I want to verify that the state was updated correctly, because that's what I see in my application. That's what actually my business logic is. And since we ran into the problem quite often, we kind of like defined it in a more generic way, what do we want? And what we said was, okay, we want to have a real store which contains our business logic. We want to do some kind of black box testing. We don't want to like be dependent on any kind of middleware. We want to verify any state and any action, and we even want to do that if those are async. And we couldn't find anything that would actually match our requirements, so we did our own thing. And I'm sorry, I know chai is not super popular anymore, but bear with me. You might be able to use it for chess too. So what did we do? So what you can do with chai, kind of like with the chess extension, you can write your own chai helpers. And the chai helper would extend the chai API. So we can now say, chai create Redux store, and we would pass our reducer and our middleware. And what we get back is a real store. With a slight twist, because we have one additional middleware that communicates with chai, which then allows us to do assertions. So what we can do is we can actually say, store dispatch fetch kittens. And then say, hey, we expect our store to have dispatch fetch kittens. And that works. That one doesn't. Yeah, them. Okay, so the really interesting part, like the async part, we did not solve yet. Because the moment we do that kind of assertion, the fetch kitten success was not dispatched yet. So our unit test will rightfully tell us, hey, yeah, it's not there. And that's why we introduced eventually. Oh my God, the color is off. Okay, no worries. So we introduced eventually as well. So we said, okay, we expect our store eventually to have dispatch fetch kittens and fetch kitten success. Then notify our favorite test runner once it's done. And that allows us to do all of those asynchronous testing that happens when you dispatch an action. And it works. So that test now is green. And the same thing we wanted to do for states. So what we wanted to do is we want to say, okay, we want a state to be is fetching false with a couple of image URLs and a state like. We introduced state like because if you remember Redux, it kind of like wants you to have one big state, this kind of God mode thingy. And you will never ever want to like compare this state with another one. So that's why we introduced the like, which allows partial comparisons. So you would only basically test what is really important to you and what has been updated. And that works. And why do I stretch that? Because if you take a look here, we are in reverse order. So the first state was actually the one with is fetching true, and the second one was the one with the images. But the test is correct, because we just say it needs eventually to be there. We don't say it needs to be there in an order, just at some point within the lifetime of that Redux store, it needs to be there. That said, we might be interested in the order. So that's basically the last keyword we did, and that's then. So we would say we expect the state to be is fetching true and then to have the images. And now what it would do is it would actually wait until both of these states have happened in that exact order. So did we achieve what we wanted? Actually, yes, we're pretty happy with it. So we kind of like have it for testing production code for around a year now. And all of our Redux tests by now are that. And it turned out to be even simpler than we thought. So we thought it would like be a little bit trickier with the Jai integration and everything, but it's really straightforward and just a couple of new assertions. We were able to entirely encapsulate the middleware. So we would be able to just take our tests, swap the middleware, and use those tests to verify that we did not break any business logic. And that's really nice, because if you want to keep front-end developers happy nowadays, you have to give them some kind of hype-driven behavior, or like allow it, and you need something to ensure it does not break anything. And also, and for me, that's like one of the beauties about testing is we document our stores. That is something that was in the past rather tough on us, because we would not always know kind of like which middleware is triggered with which action and what are the consequences. And very often you would end up having developers just hooking to the store, dispatching the action, then watch the Redux dev tool, what is going to happen? And that changed. So now we know exactly what to expect and where to go. We open sourced it. We are far away from being famous, but I think we kind of like cool with that because we actually really did it for ourselves. And the only thing what would be really cool is like giving us feedback. Because the thing is like, if what we wrote doesn't work, we kind of have Volkswagen tests, something like that. So, and we all know that's really expensive. So we try to avoid it. So if you find anything that does not work as it expects, please let us know. Please, please. And one last thing. Anyone interested in doing the same for chest? Because thank you. I mean, I know you cannot do this super cool Fluent API thingy, but I mean, you can do expect assertions, and you could also do, I don't know, expect Redux store assertions in order, something like that. Yeah, that's it for me. If you have any questions, you can find me anywhere under the handle Futurana, kind of like the Matt Groening series with Joanne. Yeah, thank you for listening. And
any question for Anna?
Yeah, for a question, what happens if the dispatch never happens? So is there a timeout or anything on the eventually?
it kind of like, so basically it depends on your test runner. If you're using Mocker, you're tied to the Mocker timeout. And there is no easy way to kind of like set that within Jai. Other test runners, you can actually set a timeout explicitly for those tests.
Thank you.
Anything else?
You said you have no other solution that solves your problem. Have you considered Redux Saga test plan, which seems kind of similar, or have you not heard at the time?
So don't stick too much with Redux Saga. We are actually not using Redux Saga. I just loved the way they explained to me how I should write tests. And so I kind of picked that middleware as a very good example for like middlewares being complicated to test.
Okay.
Okay, then thank you.
Thank you.